This is Pave It Black.
Hi, and welcome to Pave It Black, the official podcast of the National Asphalt Pavement Association. I'm Richard Willis.
And I'm Brett Williams.
And in today's episode, we're diving into the world of European asphalt technologies. In the past, we've had numerous technologies like stone matrix asphalt and warm mix asphalt, which were really developed in Europe, and we've eventually brought them over into the US market. Now, when most people think about infrastructure, they probably think about physical materials like the asphalt itself. But there's so much more that goes into making roads sustainable, resilient, and ready for the future, and especially some of that is happening in Europe right now.
So today I'm really interested to hear some of the things that might be a little bit different than what's happening in the US and how those might be able to be implemented as we look at opportunities for innovation and making our product more sustainable.
To help us explore some of these innovations and initiatives, we've invited Dr. Breixo Gómez from the European Asphalt Pavement Association to the podcast. Welcome, Breixo, and can you tell us a little bit about yourself and who the European Asphalt Pavement Association, or EAPA, is?
Hello, Richard. Hello, Brett. It's an absolute pleasure for me being here. It's an honor on behalf of the whole EAPA family. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope that you and all the listeners you have, I know all around the world, will enjoy learning a bit more about what is going on in Europe. So for all of you that don't know me, I'm Breixo Gómez, Technical Director of the European Asphalt Pavement Association. Unlike NAPA, we have a small team in Brussels. We are a small secretary here, and I'm basically taking care of all the technical issues. For example, the Committee on Health, Safety and Environment, Asphalt 4.0, etc. All the technical content for our communication, our publications, etc. And also, for example, the participation in other associations or in standardization committees, where among other technical committees, I'm the convener or the coordinator of the working group for the standards of asphalt mixtures. So this is a bit what I do. And for all of you also who don't know much about EAPA, EAPA is an association of national associations. In Europe, most of countries, I would say, they have their own national association, and the association of those is what is EAPA. So at the moment, we have 17 national members, plus about 30 associate members, which are companies that are directly into EAPA. We always like that EAPA works a bit like a two-way channel. On the one hand, every time we have to give a response to any public consultation or produce any paper, any position paper or guidance or anything, it's up to the members to provide the inputs and to decide what is the message that we want to give for the European industry. And on the other hand, we also want to keep all the national members informed on what is going on in Europe, because we're in closer contact to for example, the European institutions and the European administration. So this is why we are a platform where people or members can get informed and can also share what is going on in different countries. And this, I would say, is the best of my job, what I enjoy the most, because I in direct contact with people all across Europe, and I can know firsthand what is going on and what are the challenges and what are the different things that are doing here and there. So when they invite me to go to a national conference or so, they normally ask me what is going on in Germany, how do they do this, or what is this new regulation going on in the Netherlands or so. And this is great that I have access to all that.
So Breixo, I'm hoping we could maybe start the conversation and provide listeners with a little more context. You had shared some statistics like more than 90% of European roads are surfaced with asphalt, and that the EU's road infrastructure is a significant public asset valued at over 8 trillion euros. So could you maybe tell us a bit more about the importance of asphalt in Europe and its role in supporting the pavement network and infrastructure in Europe?
I would say just starting by figure of more than 90% of roads are paved in asphalt in Europe already give you an idea of how impossible it's actually even to leave your own house or your job or at the school or so without actually using an asphalt road. This is how huge is the importance that asphalt roads have in Europe at the moment. No? And even if you need to go to catch a train or go to the airport to catch a flight or anything, still you need to use a road, right? So this is a fundamental piece for our society nowadays here. And it's a pity, I always say it's a pity that society sometimes only thinks about roads or only pays attention when something is wrong. It's a bit like health. We only start diet or these kind of things when something is wrong. And it's a pity because sometimes we just give it for granted. We have seen them for so long, even when we are born in a house, the road was already there in front of the house. And it seems like it's just part of our landscape and the nature, but it's not. Someone put it there and someone has to maintain it and take care of that. And let me tell you something. During COVID, there was a moment where the road transport was the only one, or practically the only one, means of transport really working. And this actually showed people how important our road transport is nowadays. And our workers were one of the very few that continued working, continued out there, providing for the society. And it's a pity sometimes when I see people angry or annoyed because there is some crew working on the road and creating some traffic jam or so, because these guys are there making roads safer and smoother, meaning that less maintenance for our cars, less fuel consumption, less emissions from our cars, more comfort, etc. So are doing a great job and a great benefit for our society. And however, we tend to see only the bad part. No? It's a pity, and I think society and policymakers and everybody should understand better all this.
Recently, EAPA published a roadmap kind of for decarbonization for the asphalt industry in Europe, very similar to what NAPA put forward a few years ago called the Road Forward. Could you walk us through some of the key technologies and strategies y'all are exploring to hit this target? And then what is EAPA actually doing? You can set these goals, you can set this vision, but what are some of the boots on the ground efforts that y'all are putting forward to try to get higher wrap mixes or look at carbon neutral technologies?
Yes, so this is an important document indeed that we published in June during the ENE Congress in Budapest, and is being a great hit, I would say, because we are receiving a great feedback. People like it a lot. I think it's a very strategic document that we have at the moment. It's a summary of, I think it's about 8 pages of a long work done in the EAPA over the last couple of years. We are now working on an extended version with all the explanations about the calculations, methodology, and everything. But in this document that it has been already released is where we have the outcomes and the strategy and this roadmap. This is an exercise that we started in EAPA, as I said, a couple of years ago. It comes after the decarbonization objectives that we have here, more specifically reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, 55%, and being carbon neutral or net zero emissions in 2050. So we started working on, okay, what will be the strategy, the levels of implementations of different technologies that we will need to have in 2030 and in 2050 to make sure that we meet these objectives. And for that, we follow a 5-step methodology. Basically, first seeing what were the emissions in 1990, which is, by the way, the reference year for the emissions. Then seeing what are the emissions nowadays. Then seeing what will need to be the emissions in 2030 and 2050. Then we analyze what is the decarbonization potential of different technologies. For example, how do the emissions change if I have a 5% reclaimed asphalt content and I increase to 10% or to 20 or to 30 or to 40? And the same with many other techniques and technologies like reducing temperature, switching fuels in asphalt plants for more sustainable options, or reducing the moisture in aggregate stockpiles, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of things that we consider. And by knowing where we were, where we have to be in 2030 and 2050, and by knowing the decarbonization potential of all these technologies that we consider, the last step was to create a roadmap, a strategy with the levels of implementation of these technologies that we will need to have in 2030 and 2050 to make sure, as I said, that we meet the objectives. So this is the work that we did, and this is the summary that we have in this document.
I think when you're looking at a decarbonization of the industry, it's an awfully big elephant to eat. There's a lot that you have to do to make that happen. So I think my question is, like, what are some of the low-hanging fruit that y'all see as things that right now you can start working on in Europe versus some of those things where I need someone to invent this to make it happen?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we actually have 2 roadmaps. So one is from now to 2030, and then the other one is how we will aim to reach 2050. And some of the technologies that we have included in the analysis for 2050 are not for 2030 because it's not feasible that we will have it at least in a significant way in such a short time, because we are talking about 6 years ahead, right? For example, something that is more feasible because we are already pushing it forward in Europe is the use of low temperature asphalt or warm mix asphalt. We have already in Europe countries like Germany or the Netherlands that the industry already have the objective of producing 100% of the asphalt mixes at low temperature from next year. So this is already something that is happening. France already increased a lot, and they also have very big objectives in this regard. Countries like Norway already have a production of 30-something% of the total production is already warm mix asphalt. So it's quite feasible to assume that by 2030 we will have around 50% of the total production in Europe. We also consider, for example, switching fuels. We still have in Europe some countries using coal as fuel in asphalt plants. This is something that from the point of view of carbon emissions, it cannot be accepted. And so by 2030, we consider some switch of fuels, at least to changing coal and diesel, for example, to other things like gas. And by 2050 is when we can explore other types of energy sources, such as even hydrogen or biofuels or these kind of things, right? For example, low carbon binders, not necessarily alternative binders to what we have right now, like bio binders or so. It can be an interesting tool for the future. We're still starting with this. There are so many different approaches. We don't have a lot of long-term experience with them. Indeed, they have a lot of potential to help a lot the industry. But we talk about low carbon binders, also including bio binders. It could also be conventional binders as we have nowadays, but just produced in a way that produce less emissions. So we could be the same binders that we have nowadays, but if they are produced in a way that they don't bring embedded emissions, then it will be also good for the industry. So this is another type of consideration that we have in this document, among many other things.
I guess I have one follow-on question I'm just curious about. You mentioned like the initiatives in some countries to like lower production temperature. I'm just curious, like with those initiatives and the roadmap and having thresholds set to like where you need to be on some of these different technologies or efforts to reduce emissions, how are those implemented or led, or what are you seeing in terms of, is that an industry initiative to lower production temperatures? Is that an agency? Is that agency industry working together? Can you kind of talk about how that process goes in the different countries and what you're seeing in terms of progress and how we can move the needle on some of these technologies and really hit those targets that you have laid out in the roadmap?
So that is actually a very interesting question, because first of all, something very important that we include in our roadmap is that this roadmap is not a unique roadmap that should be implemented as it is exactly in every country. Not all the countries start from the same point, and not all the countries will have the same opportunities. So maybe in a country, it makes a lot of sense to go for a low temperature production. Other countries may have a lot of potential for biofuels or so because they have a big production of these kind of things. Other countries maybe will be better to have more circularity, etc. So it's more like a reference for companies and producers to know what are they doing and seeing a bit like where more or less they should be. And specifically for the topic of warm mix asphalt, what is happening is that in different countries, all of them pushing in the same direction, that is that we need to reduce the temperature, the production temperature. For example, we have countries where they just pass regulations on fumes exposure on site, and reducing temperature is one of the main tools to reduce fumes exposure. We have others that is more regulations related to stack emissions, and evidently reducing fuel consumption, and so in the asphalt plants will help. In other countries, we have green public procurement systems where manufacturers have to provide environmental product declarations, and so consuming less energy, less fuel, and so it's going to help as well. What I'm trying to say is that for one reason or the other, what we are seeing in Europe is that different policies are all pushing towards the direction of reducing temperature. And sometimes it's not easy, because even if this comes from a regulation, so comes from the administration, then when the industry tries to do it, there is a point where something don't move so fast as it should. And sometimes what it happens is that over the last 20 years, in some countries, warm mix asphalt has not been used so much. So now there is a bit of reluctancy or it looks in some countries that is like a new product coming from some research projects, and that is not, and sometimes the growth administrations don't rely so much on that. And this is why we are trying to communicate a lot that this is a technology that has more than 20 years, that we have a lot of successful experience all around the world, and that it has a lot of potential in many different ways. So this is what we are trying to push at the moment.
Very good. I know decarbonization is a critical goal, but I also know that resilience is extremely important. Could you share how EAPA defines resilience in terms of asphalt and asphalt pavements, and then also talk about what steps are being taken to enhance the resilience of pavements for European roads?
So I just gave a present about defining the resilience of asphalt. It's a topic that is very interesting because it's gaining so much importance here in Europe at policy level. And it's not so clear what this topic means for us. It reminds me sometimes of what happened with sustainability like 20 or 25 years ago, and with this easy concepts of sustainable development is developing ourselves without compromising the development of future generations. So easy peasy, very easy to understand, but no one back then would foresee such a huge development in so many different lines, from circular economy, product category rules, environmental product declarations, decarbonization roadmaps, etc., right? When I see the importance that resilience is gaining nowadays at the top level of our policy, I kind of have the feeling that this is something big that is coming for the next years, right? And the new administration that we just started now in Europe after the elections already published a strategic document for the coming 5 years. And one of the pillars, together with sustainability, of course, digitalization, so is resilient economy. So this is at the same level that sustainability or digitalization or things like that are fundamental pillars now. In NAPA, we started thinking about, okay, so how may this develop in the future? What this can mean for us, right? And we started by seeing first that in Europe, we have a lot of new challenges. Things are changing very fast. For example, increasing traffic demands. Over the last decades, traffic has never stopped increasing and increasing in Europe. And it's not just about the number of vehicles, it's also about the traffic loads. We are seeing heavier and heavier vehicles with higher and higher tire pressures, with these super single tires, etc. And it's not even about the vehicles as we know them nowadays. On top of that, we are seeing new types of road users that are coming to our roads, like electric cars, self-driving cars, heavy-duty vehicles that have certain characteristics that may impact the durability of roads. And on top of that, we have climate change, more extreme weather events. So a lot of things are changing, and this is why we need to understand all that. So in EAPA, we started creating this document where the more we digged into this term or this concept, the more layers of meaning we found. Of course, from the basic, which will be the material. So we could understand for resilience, that is the capacity of a material to spring back into shape when there is an impact or some disturbance or some load or something. So we know that asphalt is a viscoelastic material, that it has this capacity with certain characteristics. We even have characteristics like the resilience modulus and this kind of thing. So at material level, we have all this meaning behind, but then we need to talk about something that goes beyond this recovering concept, is the preparation, how we are going to prepare, for example, the pavement or the infrastructure to be in optimum conditions when the impact comes. And here we can talk about maintenance, about protection, for example, drainage systems or barriers, or we can talk even about how dynamic is our standardization system and our test to measure and to design the pavements in a changing world where the weather conditions are changing, where the traffic flows are changing, etc. And the next layer is the sector. We are seeing that it's fundamental that we start thinking about the resilience of the sector, how we are going to continue functioning in the future, despite of so many challenges that we're having. Just in the last 4 or 5 years, we have seen pandemics, we have seen wars, we have seen severe disruptions in the supply chain of certain materials, fuels, prices of raw materials, energy, etc., etc. In some countries, even if the administration want to pay extra for the increasing cost of materials, and so they couldn't because of the law didn't allow to do that. And changing that, we experienced that changing that took a lot of time. So we need to start thinking about plan B if something happens that we cannot even foresee, and how we need to have dynamic systems to adapt. At the end, adaptation is also a fundamental part of resilience. And then we come to the economy, to the society, and how we protect and the perception of what is for us, for our society, the roads and infrastructure and etc. And we can come back to the challenge of the lack of manpower or the attractiveness for the young generations who are more reluctant to have a career on construction. Or we can talk about cybersecurity now that we talk about digitalization. So we have new challenges. So as you can see, when we talk about resilience, it seems like a very easy concept, but the more and more we started digging into it, a lot of layers of meaning started to appear. And this is why we decided to publish this document.
So you mentioned the term digitalization a couple times, and we've had some conversations with other people this season about some of these types of technologies. And so how are things like smart paving or plant to paver, asphalt delivery, intelligent road surveying, how are these being implemented, or are they even being implemented in Europe? And how do they play into the goals you have related to increased efficiency and being a more sustainable industry?
So the topic of digitalization indeed is very important for us as well. It's been already 4 or 5 years that we launched a new committee, a committee for Asphalt 4.0, what we call, which is at the same level of importance that the health, safety and environment or the technical committee. And we did this because we were seeing that we had more and more topics to talk about related to digitalization. The conversations started to extend longer and longer. So at some point we say, okay, we need a committee just for this and to give visibility to all these new technologies, these new disruptive things that are coming to the market nowadays. And just as an anecdote, we started producing a document trying to compile information about all these things, from the asphalt plant, tools for the logistics, for the transportation, for all the operations happening on site, for the asset management, etc. And it's been already for 2 years. And in every meeting, someone always comes with a new idea that we need also a chapter on this thing, on artificial intelligence, or the use of data coming from vehicles to do the asset management of our roads in real time, or this kind of thing. So it's a never-ending document because it's so disruptive and so many things are happening every day that is fascinating. No? So answering to your question, I think digitalization is helping, especially increasing the efficiency of what we do. Increasing efficiency means less resources that we need, less material that we have to spare, less hours of people working, less hours of functioning of machinery, less fuel, less emissions. It helps on all that. It helps also on the quality. It helps to have a higher quality product, meaning more durability, longer service life, etc., etc. And it's also helping a lot on the asset management, meaning optimizing the maintenance, trying to predict where the damage is going to happen, where we need to upgrade certain sections of the infrastructure, etc., etc. So this is something that we're seeing now, for example, as I said before, by using the vehicles, the data from vehicles, from the sensors that every vehicle nowadays have, so we can monitor in real time what is going on all across the road network. So a lot of things are happening. It's really difficult to keep track every day of the new things. But this is what we are doing in EAPA, in this committee. So it's a fascinating field.
I agree. It's definitely a fascinating area with just how much is out there and how much promise it really has, I think, for the future. I'm wanting to circle back more towards the sustainability front and just ask about European efforts related to circular economy practices, as well as the use of waste materials. Could you maybe share how some of these technologies are integrated and what impact they're having on the industry in Europe?
So circular economy, I would say that is nowadays the flagship of asphalt, I would say, because it's a material that is 100% reusable and recyclable. So this is very important in the hierarchy of waste management. We have a material that can be reused, and this is better than recycled. And nowadays, for the data that we published every year in Europe, we have these asphalting figures. We are seeing that for the amount of reclaimed asphalt that is available for our companies, we are reusing between 70-75% of that, so as asphalt into new asphalt. And on top of that, we are recycling between 20-25%, meaning that only 5% is being put to landfill. And these are excellent figures that I actually put in asphalt at the front row of circularity. I wouldn't say even only construction materials, but any material in the whole, I would say. And at the EAPA, we like very much to differentiate between what we call small circles and big circles. So small circles is when we take care of our own waste, let's say, of the asphalt at the end of the service life. But a big trend that we are seeing nowadays is also the big circles of waste and byproducts that come from other sectors and come in to be used into asphalt. And in this regard, it's not that at the EAPA we have anything against this kind of trend, but we have been very critical in some cases where we found some issues. For example, we have seen in certain waste streams being put into asphalt that there are certain substances or say certain additives or whatever that when we heat them at the manufacturing temperature of asphalt, they can release certain fumes or certain compounds that may produce certain health and safety issues. And this is something that we cannot allow in our industry. Another paradigmatic case is that sometimes some products, some byproducts or waste materials that we put into asphalt may make more difficult to reuse the material at the end of the service life. And this is also something that we cannot allow because it looks like a circular economy because it's waste that comes from another sector and we're giving a new use here. But at the end, asphalt that could be reused for different life cycles now is something that we might have to put in a landfill. So it's just a linear economy that we're just adding a new stage in the middle. For me, it's a pity when I see some studies that are more focused on how much is the maximum amount that I can put of these into asphalt without the properties being affected, because to me that is a bit like sweeping under the carpet and really not getting rid of the problem because the material is going to be there anyway. And EAPA, we have a position paper. I think it's very good to highlight all these issues, and I encourage people also to have a look at that.
EAPA and NAPA sometimes work together, and we're also both a part of the Global Asphalt Pavement Alliance, or GAPA. I'd like to get your perspective on how these organizations collaborate or how they could potentially do a better job at collaborating on some of these key initiatives moving forward, because I remember the GAPA met here at our office a few years ago, and we were talking about things, and it was popping up for the first time. I was like, oh, I didn't know y'all were working on that, or y'all were asking questions. And I was like, we wrote this paper 3 years ago on this. And so what are your thoughts on how we could leverage these groups in this alliance more effectively?
So to me, GAPA, when I talked about how EAPA works in terms of a platform for different countries to share their experience in Europe. So GAPA is the same feeling, but at a higher level. So it's how we share experience from different parts of the world, so distant from each other. So from Australia, Japan, US, Europe, Mexico, South Africa. And to me, is sometimes in all these meetings, we try always to meet at least once a year in different parts of the world. And it's always very interesting to see how, at the end of the day, we share a lot of challenges. We have common challenges, but not always the solutions are the same, or the way that we tackle different challenges not always is the same. And this is where we learn from each other. And sometimes we think that we are developing something new. And as you said, in some other part of the world, they have been already dealing with this for the last 3 years, and they have already some solutions put in place, and they already created some expertise and some knowledge that we all can learn about. So I think it's a fundamental function of GAPA that we have. Is always very interesting to be in these meetings and to participate in these initiatives. I could highlight, for example, that we have a GAPA magazine where we always welcome contributions from all over the world to share there. And I would like to also comment that last year, during the World Congress, we had a very successful workshop as well that we organized from GAPA, where the objective was to share experiences, practical experiences from different parts of the world. And it was such a successful workshop that we had the room full of participants, with even some people standing at the back because there were not seats for everybody. It was so successful. It was amazing to see that in a World Congress that is, as many of you will know, like 5 sessions in parallel going on with a huge exhibition area and workshops and everything. And still, we had such a level of participation. It was amazing to see. So I think it's a very important initiative that we have this Global Asphalt Pavement Alliance. I hope that we can get involved more and more countries on that, more and more regions of the world, and to continue learning from each other.
Before we wrap up, I was hoping that you could maybe share a little bit about EAPA's podcast, The Roadcast, and what you're doing with that, as well as maybe share if you have some upcoming projects or goals that EAPA is working on that you want to highlight for the listeners.
We decided this year to launch this project was the Roadcast, is our own podcast, which we finished the first season, and we had many top level guests, and the experience was so good. It's a video podcast, so I invite people, if not only to listen to it, so also to watch actually the videos to see how the interviews went on our YouTube channel, also on Spotify. And the idea is that the new season will come on next year. So we will work on that, and that is the idea. Regarding other projects, the truth is that over the last months or years, we have been increasing our communication activity. We are putting a lot of effort on our communication and marketing channels. We have a small team at the moment. We have 3 people, our manager, Mega, and we also have Helga and Patricia doing a great job. And we are plenty of different initiatives and different new things that we never had before. We had in September, for example, a webinar on Asphalt 4.0, where we engaged around 400 registrations in just a couple of weeks. It was very successful. We had the International Conference on Asphalt 4.0 held in Ljubljana. It's an initiative from the Slovenian and the Spanish associations, which we always support on this every year. We have just confirmed the dates on 11-12 June 2026 for the E&E event. And then there are plenty of campaigns such as the Asphalt Heroes. We have collaborations with European, for example, for the Runners Love Asphalt and the Cyclists Love Asphalt, which is a new one. And of course, we have started the conversations to somehow bring to Europe the initiative of Women of Asphalt, or at least something similar. I know that the conversations are ongoing. I don't have much information yet, but our president, Ralph Pomp, our Secretary General, Karsten Karcher, Mega, and also Siobhan from European, Siobhan McKelvey, Secretary General of European, they are really pushing this initiative forward. We have a workshop about this on the E&E Congress in June, where we, among other speakers, we have Audrey Copeland with us sharing the experiences about this initiative in the US. And it was very useful to get this insight to start this conversation and how we can continue with us also in Europe. So as you can see, a lot of things going on.
Well, Breixo, it's really been great to have you, and thank you for joining us and sharing your insights on the European asphalt technologies. It's really clear that EAPA is at the forefront of some really exciting developments, and just appreciate your time today.
Thank you to you. It's been a great pleasure being here and having this opportunity to let people know what is going on in Europe. I hope people found it interesting. I think you're doing a great job with this podcast. So congratulations to you, and let's keep working together.
I think my takeaway really from today is just how similar but yet different Europe can be in terms of they face a lot of the very similar challenges, but it is different, and some of the approaches can vary slightly, but overall we're all pulling in that same direction in terms of trying to make our product more sustainable, to be more efficient, to just overcome some of those challenges that I think are being looked at on a global scale these days.
Yeah, there definitely are a lot of similarities that I noticed, but it's also interesting, like you mentioned, the policies and politics definitely have an impact on how people move forward. Like, we're struggling in some areas to figure out how do we do some of these more sustainable technologies in a low bid environment. And they flat out got green public procurement policies that are making people do it and actually rewarding people for doing these types of initiatives in some countries. And so I think one of the things that resonated with me, it was at the end when they were talking about the global alliance, and that we really do need to continue to have those conversations to see what we can leverage that other people have already doing, look for solutions that are out there to problems that we're facing, because there are a lot of similarities, but sometimes the timing is what's different, and the politics or the policies are what's different, but we definitely can learn from each other.
Thanks for listening to Pave It Black. Visit asphaltpavement.org/podcast to find more episodes, suggest a topic or guest, become a sponsor, or learn more about NAPA. Pave It Black is produced and copyrighted by the National Asphalt Pavement Association. Music by Colleague. As always, thanks to the dedicated workforce connecting diverse communities all across America.